Time now for a quick look at what's making the front pages of some of the morning newspapers. And tomorrow is, of course, Budget Day. George Osborne's plans lead most of the broadsheets. The Guardian says that the Chancellor will promise to hit the richest 10% the hardest. The Financial Times reports that up to 900,000 workers will be taken out of the income tax system. The paper says that this may soften an otherwise brutal budget. The Daily Telegraph also highlights the exemption from income tax for the lowest paid workers. The Times says Nick Clegg is working to prevent any Lib Dem revolt ahead of tomorrow's budget by reassuring members that cutting the deficit is at the heart of the party's values. The Independent focuses on expected cuts to pay and pensions for public sector workers. And the Mirror leads with the news that James Bulger's killer John Venables is facing charges of downloading 57 child porn images. The charges against him have only come to light today after an Old Bailey judge lifted reporting restrictions on the case. With me to take a closer look at tomorrow's papers is George Jones from the Press Association. And George, we must say, this is your swan song for us. Retirement beckons.
Yes, it does. Off to the country, off to Somerset.
A proper
40 years of reporting politics, so it's probably time to bow out.
Quite enough for anybody, I would say. But we'll try not to make this too emotional for you. Your final review for us. We'll start with the Daily Express.
Budget all over the papers. I mean, whatever happened to budget secrecy and budget purdah? But it's interesting to know why the Treasury has leaked and prepared at the Budget Day with this announcement, basically, that there is going to be this tax increase, lower taxes for the less well-off. I mean, normally a Chancellor would want to have that as a sort of final element of his budget. You know, he'd sort of get up and say, and of course, and what I can do is cut taxes at a stroke for the lower paid, yet he's announced it tonight for tomorrow morning's paper. So is there some other big surprise in the budget that's going to come tomorrow?
So you think there could be another carrot to go with the many sticks?
Well, he won't want it all to be bad news. So, I mean, of course, this is the increase in the personal allowance. Important for the Lib Dems because it's a step towards the Lib Dem policy at the election, which they said they wanted to raise the tax threshold to £10,000. So is it something perhaps to try and keep Lib Dems, who are clearly going to be worried by the austerity budget, on side? And of course, the Guardian does focus on, it says here that the Chancellor will promise, you know, that the budget will hit the richest 10% as well as other people. And, you know, this attempt to sort of remedy mistakes that happened in previous budgets, particularly by the Conservatives, where it's felt that the pain wasn't equally shared out, that those at the bottom of the pay scale suffered worse. And
this idea of a steep VAT rise, that would hit everybody, yes, buy things subject to VAT.
Yeah. But interestingly, the FT says actually that it's looked at the figures and it seems to think the combination of the sort of plans suggests that Mr Osborne does not need to raise VAT to meet his fiscal targets. Now, all the other papers are saying, you know, we could be in line for VAT going up from 17.5 to 18.5 to 20% possibly. But perhaps is that going to be his surprise when he'll say, and I don't have to raise VAT? And there would be a huge sort of sigh of relief, wouldn't there, by the nation if VAT doesn't go up. So I wonder whether that's his surprise. But the FT is the only paper which seems prepared to sort of stick its neck out and say VAT might not rise.
Do you think that there will be quite a few things in there that we haven't been it hasn't been leaked out already? Because we feel like we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks already.
Yes, and I mean, we've already been talking. We know that capital gains tax, for example, is going to rise, particularly for people with second homes and who own shares. We've been told that council tax in England will be frozen and that there'll be the cutbacks in the public sector. I mean, there's no doubt we have been softened up over the last sort of month, really, for painful cuts in public spending. But interestingly, I'm sure within that battered budget box, which George Osborne will hold for the last time tomorrow, won't he? Because then it's going to go into, as it were, in a museum and not be held by chancellors. There must be some other secrets in there that he's going to announce.
The Times is saying that it's the harshest budget, and of course Nick Clegg's got his work cut out, hasn't he, to try to keep his MPs on side.
To keep his MPs on side. I mean, in a way, this probably the honeymoon, if this new coalition has had a honeymoon, is likely to end tomorrow when people realise quite what is coming in store with public spending cuts. I mean, you're already seeing things you know, like was it a visitor centre at Stonehenge being cancelled, some road projects being cancelled. So these public spending cuts will begin to bite. And of course, Nick Clegg is clearly worried Lib Dems are going to be, as it were, people say, well, the Tories, they want to come in, they want to make the cuts. But of course, the Lib Dems are now being sort of, their hands dipped in the blood as well. They're bearing responsibility for these. Before we move on from the Times, let's just have a quick look at this picture story of Prince Harry following in Diana's footsteps. Yes, I mean, this was shortly before she died, didn't she? She went out, I mean, she took this charity against landmines and mines very seriously, and those sort of images of her. And there is Prince Harry wearing virtually the identical kit. It's apparently in Angola where he has been doing it. He's in a Mozambique. He's in a Mozambique minefield, and she was in Angola doing it. But it is a sort of fairly neglected side of the armaments trade and charity, and he clearly wants to be to follow it up. Let's look at the Independent. It has one of his sort of idiosyncratic headlines in this. Yes. But do you remember that film, was it The Life of Brian, when they're arguing and they say, what did the Romans ever do for us? Well, they built roads, what was it, and that sort of thing. So what has the public sector ever done for us? And of course, as the Independent answers it, apart from providing education for 7 million children every year, perform 6 million NHS operations, collect 28 million tonnes of household rubbish, and keep our streets safe from crime. The list goes on, yeah. The list goes on, but it is the public sector which will lose jobs and have a pay freeze possibly for 1 or 2 years. And pensions probably affected as well, as we were talking about all over the weekend. Let's look at the Telegraph. They've also got the looking ahead to the budget, but their story at the top is deaths linked to junk food. Junk food, yes. I mean, this is a rather amazing statistic. It says more than 40,000 Britons are dying unnecessarily every year because of the high levels of salt and fat in their diet, and this is sort of eating junk food, hamburgers, other meals, and particularly these sort of fats which are in these processed and packaged foods. So it says NICE, which is the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, wants possibly even a government subsidy to make foods healthier and better advertising and lower salt. But the idea being that these deaths are absolutely avoidable if people ate properly. If people ate properly. And of course it's not just deaths, but thousands of other people suffer ill health and heart disease as a result of eating these products. And a huge cost to the NHS. That's the final one, the Daily Mirror, and this story about John Venables on several of the pages. Yes, and I think it was the Mirror which broke the original story, I think, didn't it, about the fact that one of the Bulger killers had been brought or been arrested and was back into trouble with the police. But now the ban on naming and the details of the charges has been lifted, and clearly it's going to be a big story for the tabloid papers. It certainly is. George, thank you very much for this review, all the other reviews, all the analyses of all those political stories, and thank you for overlooking any daft presenter questions over the years. Thank you very much. Enjoy your retirement. We shall miss you. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it all the time. Good, I'm glad you have. Thank you.